and God spoke to me not like some bright light coming down, but God spoke to me through the children that I started to work with. I started the tutoring program in the basement of my church, and started working with middle school kids, and founded an organization called the St. Luke's Saturday School. It was an offshoot of St. Martin's, and that ran for 20 years, and eventually by 2004 morphed into us founding an independent day school called Harlem Academy. And
that was also based
out of the church.
Out of the church.
Correct. And so that started in 2004 and has been going gangbusters and doing quite well, and we're getting students into Ivy League colleges, into very, very good independent schools throughout the Northeast.
So it's a free school, or
it's
a private paid school?
It's a private school, and as I was explaining to you before, private schools historically have been expensive and been very sort of exclusionary. So you had to come from the right family. You had to do this and you had to do that.
Yes.
And what we have done in Harlem, and then I replicated it again in Connecticut, was to start an independent school with a sliding scale tuition. So it was the idea that people could come in and pay what they could afford. And we would look at their, at their salary and look at them and say, all right, you can pay $5,000, you can pay 10, and the whole idea was...
So it was a similar pattern in Connecticut?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And what that does, though, is it puts a lot of pressure on you to do fundraising outside, because you have to make up that difference.
Yes.
The majority of independent schools, 90% of their budget comes from tuition. And so what we were trying to do was create a model where the budget could be filled by other gifts from foundations, from corporations, and from angels, individuals.
Yes, yes. So you did fundraising projects, and that's where sort of scholarship goes to the students. Huh?
Exactly.
So students were given the choice to pay based on their ability.
Correct. I would say they were based
on appearance.
Right. They weren't given a choice. They were told, "You've been accepted. This is the income that you have reported to us. This is what you're going to need to pay as your contribution to this school."
Yes. And the enrollment was based on what? You said selected students?
Yes. They would have to show.
What were the criteria?
Well, they'd have
the requirements.
They'd have to show promise. They'd have to show interest. We would interview them. We would interview their families. We would then talk about the commitment it takes, because when you're educating a child, it's not just the child.
Yes.
It's the family.
The whole background.
And so, for instance, in Connecticut, at the school I started there called Trinity Academy, we ran from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 11 months a year. And what we found was that the kids increased their reading scores by a whole year.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
And we would provide breakfast, we would provide lunch, and then aftercare, and people would come and...
That is interesting.
And because what we found was, and we did it 11 months a year because...
What year was that?
This was 2012.
And how many students you're looking at?
We're looking, at that point, we started with 15 students. It was one grade, and what you do is you start with one grade,
private schools,
and then you build per year.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they're up to now. At Harlem Academy, my guess is that they're up to probably about 125 to 150 students in the school.
So was it open for only Christians?
Not at all. It's an
Jews, Christians?
Absolutely. And what we determined was that the idea is that schools are better functioning when there is the idea of spirituality involved.
Yes.
We're not telling you what to believe. What we're trying to do is expose you to various views.
Interesting.
So that we would have an interfaith chapel, and we would bring students there. So that was an important aspect of how we founded the school, because we felt that that you're not truly educated unless you understand the differences in history and belief and culture that comes from
Yes.
our faith backgrounds.